Okay, and we'll do a little test just to make sure that everyone can hear us. Welcome everyone for joining us, and thank you for joining us today. In just about 20 seconds. Okay. Awesome. Welcome and thank you for joining us today to discuss supply shortages, lumber prices, and COVID-19 effects on our industry. We are honored to have NAHB's experts with us to lead the conversation. We have with us today Lake Colson, Karl, Eckhart, and Alex Strong. Lake is the Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Association of Home Builders, NAHB. Lake directs the federal legislative program and manages the association's political action committee and grassroots network to complement the lobbying efforts. Lake's portfolio includes managing California's and Texas's federal legislative delegation, and his policy experience has concentrated on tax, energy, environmental, and appropriations issues. Lake holds a BS in economics from the University of Delaware and a master's in public policy from the University of Maryland. And we have Karl, who serves as Vice President of Intergovernmental Affairs. And in this capacity, Karl works with state and local associations and members of NAHB to ensure a strong real estate market in America by electing and educating pro-housing candidates at every level of government. Eckhart has enjoyed a career in all aspects of government relations and grassroots, including service in the U.S. Senate, political campaigns from local mayor to presidential, state and local ballot measures, fundraising, and various lobbying efforts. Karl completed a Master of Arts degree in public policy at George Mason University. And we also have Alex. Alex is a federal legislative director for government affairs at NAHB. Alex directs the federal lobbying on trade and building materials issues, legal and regulatory reform, small business issues, property rights, and technology issues, as well as political activities in 8 states for NAHB. Alex holds a BS in economics from Virginia Tech and an MPP from George Mason University. Thank you guys, and we really appreciate your time, and I will let you kick it off.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it, and really appreciate the time and the opportunity to join you all today to talk about what is the #1 issue right now at NAHB, and that is lumber and building materials, the supply and the price of it. That is what our economists see as one of the biggest and maybe most significant headwinds as we go into this, as we work through the first quarter of this new year. It will come as no surprise to anybody on this call. I'm not stating anything new to tell you that lumber prices are high. In fact, they are historically high. And just to put a finer point on that, back in April, well, I'll back up even further to 2018 when we hit the all-time record high, then all-time record high on the Random Lengths Framing Lumber Index at $580 per thousand board foot. And we were going up to the Hill and to the administration screaming bloody murder over that. This past week, we hit $960 per thousand board foot. Just today, the Framing Lumber Index peaked above $1,000 per thousand board foot. So we are so far beyond what is a normal market at this time, and it is dramatically, substantially affecting housing affordability and starting to delay or suspend projects altogether. So again, I can't state strongly enough that this is the #1 issue at NAHB, the #1 issue that the full breadth and depth of our staff is working on. And so what exactly are we doing? What are the causes of this? What are we doing to try to address it? Right. Well, if you talk to anyone who is aware of this market, they will give you 10 different reasons why there are issues. What we know is that heading into COVID early last year in February, March, the sawmills generally made a calculation that with the coming closures, with the projected economic downturn associated with the COVID pandemic, that housing too was going to follow suit and would be lower than historically has been on average, and so they curtailed production pretty much across the board. Well, obviously that wasn't the case. They bet wrong there. Housing enjoyed great success because in part we were able to work with the Department of Homeland Security to ensure that in most states and localities that building was considered an essential business and allowed to continue with safe work practices through the pandemic. So with that continued strength in the industry, coupled with the unprecedented do-it-yourself market for remodeling, with folks staying at home all day every day, they began to look around the house and look at things they could do differently, they'd like to do to improve their homes, and so that essentially added to the run on the lumber bank, so to speak. All of these things coupled to apply unprecedented demand on the dimensional lumber market, and sawmills initially and generally speaking have found it difficult to keep up with this demand. That is a big part of the picture here. Additionally, sawmills have been subject to many of the safe work or work shutdown requirements, depending on the locality, and thus has just simply not been able to produce. Once they understood that the housing market was going to be all right, was in fact doing quite well, they were unable to catch up to demand, and they've been in a steady game of catch up ever since. And so from starting in April of last year, we saw the framing lumber index go from roughly $375 per thousand board foot and shoot up over 174% into the third quarter, where it crested at about $960 per thousand board foot. Subsequently, we saw about a 50% decline that corresponded with in part NAHB's meetings with the Department of Commerce and the Trump administration to shine a light on this issue and to encourage and do anything within their power to help or to encourage mills to increase production to address the supply shortfall. So then we saw about a 50% decline in the price as it backed off to about $550 per thousand board foot. Since then, as you're all aware, we've again seen a return to historic highs, just last week reaching a new all-time high. So what are we doing? What are we going to be doing, and what are we currently doing to try to address this? Well, the first and foremost thing we can be doing is to brief this new administration, this new Congress on the issue. You have so many newcomers on Capitol Hill, in the White House, in the Department of Commerce. You don't even have a chief over at the Department of Commerce yet. She is yet Gina Raimondo, our current governor of Rhode Island, who will soon be the head of the Department of Commerce, has yet to be confirmed by the full Senate, but that should happen any day now. At any rate, it is incumbent upon us, and our mission has been to brief all of these folks, get them up to speed on the existence of this problem and the severity of the problem. Additionally, we are calling on them, the members of the administration and those on Capitol Hill, to bring together a summit, if you will, of all the folks in the lumber supply chain. Because again, I referenced earlier, anybody who knows what is going on has 10 different opinions on why it is happening. So we want to get to the bottom of it. We want the administration to make this a top priority on day one for the new head of the Department of Commerce. And so that's what all our efforts have been focused on to this point. And we are working feverishly. Our full lobbying team is meeting with members of Congress on Capitol Hill and their new staffs to get them up to speed on this issue. It is our hope that if we can sit down and bring all these parties together, shine a light on this issue, that we can help, we can empower and direct the administration to do anything that is necessary to increase the supply of dimensional lumber specifically, but more generally building materials as we begin to see huge spikes in price on panels, everything all the way down to GFCI circuits. I mean, just everything was put on a pause last year because of the pandemic, and all of the factories, whether they be domestic or abroad, are having trouble catching up with the demand. So all of our efforts are focused on doing whatever we can to increase and make certain and steady the supply of building materials, very specifically framing lumber and lumber used in residential construction. So that's all I had for right now, basically on with respect to prepared remarks. I'm much more interested in taking questions if we have time and hearing anecdotes from you, because that again is what we are relaying to the folks on Capitol Hill. We are getting every day I get invoices in from members who say that I built a home. I built a home back in February, and this was my lumber package. And I just went back to the same lumber yard, the same building plan, asked for the same lumber package, and it's doubled. So that's what I'm interested in hearing, and as I try to answer any questions you might have. But that's all I had again for the prepared remarks, and happy to take questions if we have time.
Hi, Alex. I'm going to flip it to Elise Trapp, our Director of Government Affairs, to ask you a few questions that have come through for lumber.
Thank you.
Hey, Alex. So we have two questions from Scott Belgard. What caused the second rise after September?
Yeah, so the consensus opinion there is that, again, if you look historically at the output of dimensional lumber, it begins to slow as we go into the winter months. Because in the Midwest and in the northern parts of the United States, there simply isn't the demand as they go into a hiatus on the building season. So there is typically a reduction, a curtailment in the production of dimensional lumber. That this time around, coupled with the fact that they be in the mills, were already behind, and you have another acute supply squeeze. That also tracks with a return to shutdown orders and other safe work practices, as we saw a second spike in the COVID pandemic. So again, you have from cutting the actual logs, getting them on the decks, to getting them on trucks or trains, to getting them delivered to your local lumberyard. At every point in the chain, there are issues related primarily to the pandemic, but there are also factors at play. But there are issues at every point in the supply chain that is constricting the supply and slowing the delivery. And while we will bounce around these historically high levels, we only probably truly see, I think our economics team agrees, we only see true relief when we get almost to herd immunity in terms of, again, it all goes back to the pandemic. Once we get back to sort of business as usual, will they be able to catch up fully and deliver? We're seeing already sort of the long end of the tail, the futures market showing some relief as we head into spring, as the mills crank back up. But it unfortunately is going to is in all likelihood will bounce around those historic highs for some time until we see relief from the pandemic and some return to normalcy.
So you think that's what will increase the supply? A second question from Scott was, what will actually need to happen to increase the supply of lumber? But you kind of answered that. Do you think that getting back to that normalcy, that herd immunity, once COVID starts lifting up, is that what it will take to get that increased supply of lumber?
I mean, I think that's a big part of it, probably the biggest part. And anything we can do as a building community to help to partner to lock arms with those in the lumber supply chain on a policy level, that's what we're going to the administration. What policy levers can we pull to make sure the mills have a safe work environment and are able to produce more? What can we do to ensure that truckers can run unfettered and continue to deliver more and more lumber to lumber yards? That's where we're focusing our efforts, because that's where we believe we're going to find the greatest ability to increase the supply. I can tell you, I've been on lots of conversations with logging groups. They are cutting them as fast as they can. There's money to be made all along the supply chain, and you'd be a fool right now if you were sitting on it and not selling it. The supply crunch appears to be coming at or around the mills, and then the shipping beyond that. So anything we can do is on the policy front to ensure that those folks can continue to work unfettered access to their work, to a safe work environment, that's going to help increase the supply.
Thank you for that, Alex. Brian Blanchard, I see your question. I think Alex pretty much answered that one. And what you just said, Alex, kind of ties into a question we have from Steve Seville. He's hearing that lumber mills are loaded with timber, but will only cut to order to keep prices high. Is that something you can speak on?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly try to speak on it, but we've heard anecdotally that for years, if not decades, the price of wood has been artificially depressed, and so it would stand to reason that in a period of high prices, that mills would seek to reap those profits to balance things out, right? That's just basic economics. We don't have, I mean, that's a fairly serious accusation though. And we want information if that is in fact occurring, because that can get into price gouging, that can get into other things where we need to involve state attorneys generals to look into this issue. We are not aware of of this happening specifically just yet. I encourage anybody who has firsthand knowledge of such events to get that information into us, and we can use it, and that will certainly help. But as of right now, it's just conjecture. We know something is wrong at the mill level. We don't know exactly what it is. And that, again, it circles back to my point. What we're trying to press with the administration is to look at this problem and to figure out why there's a problem in and around the mill area, and how can we break the log jam, no pun intended.
I like the pun. Thanks, Alex. So last question before we move on. We have one last one from Chris Guillory. He wants to know, how is it possible for lumber yards to increase prices on lumber they have already purchased? Good question, Chris.
I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question. That's certainly their purview. I mean, they too have rising costs associated with operating their business in these unique times. Absent any contract, I don't know how you discourage that or how you explain why they wouldn't be doing that. It's a great question. We obviously don't want to see it. It doesn't help our members, and it doesn't help home buyers afford a new home. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that one.
Well, I think it was a great answer, Alex.
Another thing, to finish off on that, another thing that I can offer, just to sort of highlight another issue that is playing in this. I mentioned earlier the DIY market. So because there's unprecedented demand in the DIY market, the big box folks, the big regional lumber yards, but in particular, the blues and the oranges of the building materials worlds are getting massive amounts of lumber on contract from these mills. So if you look at the pie that is the lumber demand, the big box guys are getting a massive quantity of that, which is further constricting the small supply that mom and pop builders and mom and pop lumber yards are getting. So they are feeling the pinch all the way down the chain. And again, the DIY market is contributing to that factor. But ultimately, again, it goes back to the mills, and we need to see more coming out of the mills.
Alex, thanks for that answer. I do have someone asking for your contact info. Is there an email you can share with us? I'll type it in the chat box for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. Again, I'm happy to just chat about any of the issues. Would love to hear stories and take any anecdotes. My email address is astrong, ASTRONG @NAHB.org.
All right, thank you, Alex. So whoever wants to go next, feel free.
All right, I'll go ahead and take it. Thank you, Alex, for your enlightenment. All right, so I'm Karl Eckhart. I work in our state and local department, and our job is to work with the EOs and staff and members to help all those things at the, I guess, at the ground level. And I'll talk a little bit today about building moratoriums and impact fees and a couple other issues that I know are popping around the country. I know that in Louisiana and around Baton Rouge and the New Orleans areas, there are several little, either little cities or parishes that are trying to put in moratoriums. First, let me say, as the saying goes, it's not you, it's them. And the moratorium is one of the oldest things that we fight against in our operation. There is no like quick fix or silver bullet to stop the politicians from using that tool. You just have to get in and talk to them and convince them that what they are doing is going to make the problem exponentially worse when they come to their senses. I've sent some examples of how to push back to Elise and Karen and also to the New Orleans folks, and we can put that up for the statewide as well. But with the moratorium, the real way to push back is just to show that housing does drive the local economy. And if you stop housing, you're going to put a big stop on the local economy. Prices will continue to go up because demand is not going to stop just because building stops. And often the moratorium is because there was bad planning in the first place. Someone who was elected 20 years ago decided that it'd be all right to build, on the water or build in the swamp or tear down all these apartment buildings and put in a new condo. So someone made the bad choice, and now you currently are paying the price for that. And so it's a good chance to go back in, maybe redo parts of that comprehensive plan or redo some of the zoning choices that were made long ago and make them more relevant. NHB has on our website some great data and some research tools that show that housing does truly drive the local economy. And we've shared that. I would encourage you to use that. Those are good talking points, and you can go in saying, look, it's not you, the builder, not you, the greedy builder, saying you just want to make more money. It's here's what's going to provide for the town, especially coming out of the slowdowns with the coronavirus. Every single town, every single state across the country is hurting. Restaurants have been shut down. The tax base is a lot smaller for local government. And so they're going to come to housing as the piggy bank. That's what they always do. They always will do that. Our job is just to slow that grab. The grab's going to happen, but we just got to make it to be as painless as possible and keep using the same argument over and over. What Alex talked about with lumber and electric switches and all that, no one can control that. What the government can control is how much they add to the cost of the house. That is 100% in their pocket. So they can make it a lot less expensive, and they can help to alleviate some of those uncontrollable costs from the products, as Alex explained. Just to give you a little bit of maybe make you feel better. Currently, if you go out west to California, which is, we describe the land of bad ideas that move east. If you go to the Palo Alto area and around San Francisco Bay Area, the average impact fee is $200,000. So the builder is paying $200,000 to get the permit. Then they start to build the house. And so the average house is, $600,000-$700,000. And a huge chunk of that is from the government. So you're not going to have that happen in Louisiana. It's just not economically possible. But percentage-wise, you can make the case. The thing we're seeing the most right now when it comes to impact fees is school impact fees. That's the one that is sort of popping around the country. We've had a number of local boards reach out for help on that. I think because it's a bit easier. You can go to, the elected officials can say, well, we're just helping kids who have been struggling through the coronavirus and all that. The important thing there is if they're going to raise that impact fee and call it a school impact fee, then make real sure it's going to the schools. A lot of states don't have laws that mandate the locality prove where the impact fee money goes. And I'm not sure about Louisiana. And you've got your state history is just perfect. The money always goes where it's supposed to go. So I'm sure this isn't a problem in Louisiana. But just in case it is, make real sure with the locality where that money is going to go. And if you see school impact fees, any of them that are popping up, reach out. We can help to push back. A couple other things that are popping right now, tree ordinances. That's a very popular one. Everybody's been locked up inside and looking out their windows, and a lot of residents are saying, it's ugly, we need more trees. And then they expect you, the home builder, to fix it. The last one I'll touch on is what I know that is probably in the news more, especially this week, is the use of natural gas versus electricity to power homes. There are several states where they're trying to ban the use of natural gas, and several states where we're trying to ban the ban on natural gas and allow consumers to have the choice. Those efforts are ongoing and going poorly and going great all over the place. But if that does start to happen locally, typically it happens locally and then branches to the state. Now I know you may say, well, Louisiana, we love natural gas, and you do, but I guarantee there's some town where there's a small college that they want to ban the use of natural gas, and it'll branch out from there. So be on the lookout. We've been working in a big coalition on that topic, so we're pretty well versed. I think that's all I had. But again, myself and my team, we are here to, we kind of consider ourselves your sports agents. We're here to make you look good. So whatever we can do to help, please do reach out.
Karl, thank you so much. You're a phenomenal sports agent. I know from personal experience, you're just so helpful and so wonderful to work with. So thank you for everything you do for us. So does anyone have any last minute questions for Karl? I'm looking at the chat, looking at the Q&A. Karl, if they want to get in touch with you, what's a good email to reach you at?
Sure, I'll put that right in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're good. We'll go ahead and move on to Lake.
Well, thank you, Elise, and the members of your Greater Baton Rouge Association. Thanks for the chance for all three of us to be part of your meeting this afternoon. I just wanted to touch on just a few things that we are seeing and how we are planning to work with the I almost said incoming administration, but President Biden has been in office for 30 days, essentially. There's no secret that the focus of his efforts thus far and that of his administration is on the next COVID relief legislation that will include things like relief to state and local associations that would allow them to access the PPP loans. Alex, who was on earlier, was leading the effort to make sure that actually happened. Rental assistance for many in the multifamily industry is a critical part of the COVID relief package, and other various measures. I won't dwell on some of that, but it is our expectation that the House will take up this legislation as soon as next week. The Senate will follow after. The bill, as it's been introduced, would provide 1.9 trillion worth of relief. The Senate would, again, as I said, pick the legislation up, and the goal is to have that to the president before March 14th, when the unemployment insurance and the unemployment benefits are expected to end. So this would be a continuation of that. So, you know, a lot of questions, I'm sure Karl and a lot of our staff, Alex, everyone, what's it going to be like to work with this administration? How is this administration going to be for housing? And I look at that as in a package, meaning, you know, what does the president have to work with? What is the Congress going to be like? What is the judicial branch going to be like? Well, in the Senate, let's not forget that there is a completely divided Senate with a 50-50 makeup at the moment, with Kamala Harris, the vice president, who would be called upon to cast a tie-breaking vote if that were necessary. The House, where most tax legislation in particular always begins in the House, there's a very narrow majority with Speaker Nancy Pelosi still in control, but again, with a very slim 5 to 6 seat majority, I believe at this point. So the challenge for President Biden in enacting and getting his policies through, the challenge that he has to face is how will he keep his party happy? And there are various, just like there are in the Republican Party, there are various factions or various wings within the Democratic Party. There's what we call the blue dogs, the Southern conservative, not all Southern, but conservative Democrats. There's the progressive wing, the far left wing, the very liberal part of the party. How will all of those members work together to enact and help advance the president's agenda? Like we as advocates in Washington look at it, and we hope the same way that you look at what are the things that keep you up at night. Those are the very things that motivate us each and every day when we do our jobs. What are the things that we see on the horizon that concern us and our boss Jim Tobin and Jerry Howard, our CEO, on the regulatory front, on the policy side. I think there is reason to be concerned about President Biden's look at some environmental rules that were issued by the EPA and the Army Corps. The waters of the United States is one such rule that I would highlight here. A very significant win for builders during President Trump's time in office. The waters of the United States rule was one that provided much needed clarity to the building community. It was a rule that we supported. I could see President Biden and his EPA going back to look at this rule and to revisit whether that rule is appropriate. Does that give protection and provide for clean water? A lot has been focused of our lobbying efforts in the last cycle on codes, energy codes, building codes, all different types of codes, and our relationship with the International Code Council. I could see President Biden looking at climate change. And I think that there will be a push toward adoption of things like the latest published codes, and that there will be a significant push in that area to tighten standards and codes on the building industry. On the tax side, not in this COVID legislative relief bill, but in a bill that I think could take place toward the end of 2021, there could be an attempt to look at the various tax provisions that were enacted under President Trump. Look out for potential increases in the personal rate. Look out for possible increases in the corporate rate. These are things JP Delmore of our staff is our resident tax expert, David Logan and Rob Dietz. They all work together and look at these proposals. There was a bill introduced, I just give a quick example, just this past week, where there's going to be an attempt to tax capital gains at the personal rate. So that is something that JP and his team are looking at, and we're very, we have reason to stay awake at night because of these particular issues. On the positive side, I think that there are, as much as there are going to be concerns, there are going to be opportunities for us. One such opportunity, and we hear a lot in addition to Alex and his work on the concerns that we hear about building materials, we hear a lot about the lack of the numbers for skilled workers. And I could see an opportunity. The president's immigration proposal was issued today. And Alexis Mock of our team is carefully going through that immigration bill. I do see an opportunity for a guest worker program to help build workers in the construction industry. This administration could be friendly toward those types of approaches. Affordable housing, if you're in that industry, I do think this is an administration that could be friendly toward that. The president, by executive order, recently extended the moratorium, the eviction moratorium, as well as rental assistance. He has made that a priority. So that's just a couple of the things. I wanted to be quick because I see there are many questions in the chat room, and I do not want to get us off schedule here. So that's what we see. It's going to be an exciting time for us, and I will put in the chat room as well my name and initial, the email address, and please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And it's again been a thrill to be with you this afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity, Elise and Karen.
Well, Lake, thank you. We appreciate all the work you do as well, and we do have a few questions for you, all from Randy Noel. The first question, a question he submitted was actually more for Karl. A question he had was, would a moratorium be a First Amendment violation? Or could there be a First Amendment violation in there?
Well, Randy, you got me. I don't know. I'd have to think about that and get back to you. I don't know the answer. I can see where you're going with that, but I don't know if that would be if there's precedent on that already or not, but makes sense, but I'll have to find out.
I crack open the law books for that one. Yeah. Another one for Randy was, how long would it take to undo WOTUS? If, let's say they would go through looking at WOTUS, how long do you think that would take?
Well, first, let me say, Mr. Former Chairman, it's good to have you on the call this afternoon. Good to, I can't see you, but it's good to get the question from you. Well, Randy, in order to undo the WOTUS rule, significant effort would have to go. The president has encouraged EPA at the moment to look back at that rule. But in order to answer your question, in order to completely undo it, you would really have to go through another proposed rulemaking and for EPA to entertain comments that would be submitted to that notice of proposed rulemaking, and then issue a final rule. Under the president's under President Trump's administration, they proceeded pretty expeditiously in getting that final rule issued. You know, there would be legal challenges, Randy. I wish I could give you an answer, but I think it could be done during President Biden's term in office. It would take some significant time to do it. So within a couple of years, I would say that would be their goal.
And last one from Randy. He did ask if you could explain the carried interest significance when you're talking about earlier about capital gains.
So Randy, I'll try to take that because I actually read that just before coming on to this call there, and I encourage, I'm sure you saw this, but I encourage everyone on our blog, I believe it was either yesterday or this morning, that Congressman Bill Pascrell and two other members introduced legislation that would tax on a capital gain, where's JP was here, that would tax the capital gain at the personal or ordinary rate. I don't see this being enacted at this time. There would be significant opposition to this, especially from the real estate community. I think I want to say this is perhaps a messaging bill, but something certainly that we will carefully monitor this. And I may have JP get back to you directly on this, Randy, to give you his expert counsel on this.
Thanks, Blake, for that. Unsurprisingly, Alex, we have a few more lumber questions for you. So if you're still on, jump back on. Thanks. Hey. So another one from Chris Guillory was, do you truly feel as though prices will ever go back down, or is this the new normal and we should price accordingly? If we have to price accordingly, are discussions being had with the appraisals?
Yeah, we've heard a great deal about that appraisals, just for obvious reasons, aren't taking, or not, maybe not so obvious, but they aren't taking into account the increased cost of lumber. And I think there is, unfortunately, good reason to suspect that for an extended period of time, there are a lot of macro factors that go into suggesting that we could have in store elevated lumber prices as the new normal. Not this kind of elevated, not 900, 1,000, but slightly elevated in general. And one of them was touched on earlier. There's been a lot of consolidation in lumber producers over the last few years and decades. So you have less competition in the market, and there have been mill closures on both sides of the board, but a lot in the American Southeast over the last decade or so. So that's been problematic and is obviously feeding the problem now. Then you add into that the fact that that in British Columbia and the Canadian Rockies, there has for the last decade or more been a massive mountain beetle infestation that has decimated that's like the lumber breadbasket of the world, is the Pacific Northwest going up into British Columbia. The bill is coming due now. that lumber. They're reaching their allowable cut faster each year. They are finding more dead and diseased wood each year, and that is materially affecting the global supply of usable lumber. And an area where we get, so on any given year, we probably get 25 to 30% of our lumber from our dimensional lumber from Canada. And then of that 25 to 30%, about 50%, 60% comes from British Columbia. It's a massive haul. I mean, it's tens of billions of board feet. So if you constrain that supply over a prolonged period of time, yes, we could be looking at materially increased prices in the long run. So all of this is a long way of getting around to, yes, we've considered and are, as part of our conversations with the administration, are trying to figure out ways to include this into appraisals.
Thanks, Alex. A question from our very own Willie Martin. What percent of operations are the mills running at? Do you happen to know that?
No, not off the top of my head. I think there's no direct way to get at this, outside of like earnings calls for some of the larger publicly traded producers. And what our econ team has found when they're looking into this is they believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 85%. The outstanding question is why? Is the reason they're not at full capacity COVID pandemic related, or is it other more nefarious reasons?
And I think this might be the last lumber question for you, but I'm gonna not promise you that. Tommy Pinion would like to know, are lumber tracks still on quotas?
I'm not sure if I follow the question.
I suppose, are they meeting quotas that they have?
Are in terms of production, are they meeting production quotas?
I believe so.
I suppose that depends on who you ask. If you ask us, if you ask the home builder, I would say no. But I think that speaks to the production. I think they are. I think they are producing at a rate that is less than full capacity, and we are trying to get at why that is and change it.
Great, thank you, Alex. I meant to say earlier, we appreciate all you do for us as well. I know you cover our region, so we appreciate all the hard work. So a general question, I think anyone can answer. Is it possible for NAHB to send out webinars using cold form steel? Is that something y'all have that we could send out to our membership?
This is, I assume this is former chairman, Mr. Noel.
Yes.
I mean, Randy's right on. I mean, this is the global. I mean, the global larger issue here has always been training people to use something they're not used to using. So if we're going to go that path, yes, webinars and seminars on doing that is the way to go. It makes good sense. As part of our econ shop, as part of the comprehensive response to this, has commissioned or is commissioning a survey to find out exactly what the issues are in the lumber market, why they are why they exist, and how they are contributing to the current situation and the ongoing lumber issues we experience. As part of that, I think they are also going to be looking at, and I don't want to speak for them, they're going to be looking at the price at which people begin to substitute to steel, light gauge, cold steel framing. What we've heard anecdotally from some of those in the econ shop is that happens at north of $1,000 per 1,000 board foot. So, I mean, we're getting there. We're in that neighborhood, probably where that discussion should happen. The question is, are we going to be at that price, or will we be there for a prolonged period of time? But then there's also the issue of once you start training people to switch over, it becomes less expensive, right? It's less of a barrier to entry because more and more people know about it. It becomes accepted in the marketplace, and people begin to teach the subsequent employees to do it, and the cost comes down. So I think it's a fair question. I think it is part of our comprehensive sort of all of the above approach to addressing what we're experiencing now. And so I certainly wouldn't rule it out. And I think webinars and seminars, if the econ shop, if demonstrates that this is a viable, substitutable material, that's certainly the way we'd roll it out.
Alex. And Deborah Howard, thank you. You did, in fact, email us a great question. She would like to know, will revision of Canadian tariff rates help the supply or price of lumber? And how likely is it that the Biden administration will make this a priority?
Yeah, it's a great and one we get frequently. The short answer is yes, it will help. It certainly helps. The tariffs, the existing tariffs have already come down from 20% to roughly 9%. The problem is that is in a vacuum, just like basic economics. If you lower the tariff on an imported commodity, it is going to make it less expensive. The problem is they are experiencing the same problems we are. They are having a housing boom as well. They are demanding more of their own lumber, and so even with the reduction in the tariffs, the savings we are realizing as a market is sort of a drop in the bucket. It would be more pronounced under normal market conditions. As to the second part of the question, looking towards the Biden administration. The Biden administration, as many have seen, and who are anybody who's familiar with Joe Biden himself, a very strong union advocate, and the lumber mills are very heavily unionized, and they have manifestly suffered from the mill consolidation, from mills being set up on the Canadian side of the border. So I think what you'll see in terms of policy as we work through the existing period of no trade deal with Canada on softwood lumber, and when they begin to negotiate the new softwood lumber agreement, is you'll see the Biden administration, just as previous administrations have done, zealously try to protect the domestic lumber industry. So I think you can see a lot of the same in that. Unfortunately, that just isn't going to change the calculus for us as a country. Again, I referenced earlier, we demand every year somewhere north of 65 billion board feet of lumber, not just for housing, but for many products made and used in the United States. We every year fail to produce that amount of lumber. The remaining supply must come from Canada or somewhere else. But it makes most sense economically, obviously, for it to come from Canada. We will press the Biden administration to consider the views as they negotiate a new agreement, to consider the views of the downstream industries, read home builders and those others for whom lumber is a critical input into their finished product.
Thanks for that, Alex. I'm looking at our chat box. I'm looking at our question and answers. We have a few more minutes. So if anyone has any further questions they want to ask. Oh, Willie, thank you. Willie Martin, I would like to know, where do the building permits of today compare to 2019?
I'm happy to defer to anyone else on this, not necessarily my area of expertise, but I was just looking at an NAHB Now article recently that talked about permits and how they were up substantially. I'll link that in the chat, and you can have a look yourself and continue to monitor that. But globally speaking, I think our econ shop would confirm that they're up. I mean, again, by and large, home building is going great guns across the country. It's been one of the few bright shining spots for this economy through the pandemic. However, our economists will also say in the same breath that building material prices, specifically lumber, are beginning to serve as a drag on that unprecedented demand. So while permits are up, we are seeing we're seeing that completions are starting to fall, a surefire sign that that these increased prices and that the potential for increased interest rates into this year and next will serve as a key headwind on the industry. But again, I'm going to link this and I would encourage everybody to continue to follow NAHB now for just those sorts of updates.
Thanks, Alex. So we have one final question from Karl Babin. When will appraisals catch up with increase of costs of home building in general? And so in Louisiana, it would be good to know about that.
Well, I'm going to have to defer probably to Lake or if Karl has anything to add on this. If you're talking about lumber, I don't know how soon, how soon they are going to. We've fought for years, for decades even, for appraisals to consider more of the green components that go into a house. So they still are not, and I can't imagine anytime soon going to acknowledge, realize what the cost of lumber is doing to a house and reflect that in the appraisals. But Lake, jump in and let me know.
We've heard that kind of same thing with all the fees and the government regulations adding to the cost, which could play into your argument with the moratoriums, which will increase the price of homes. A lot of places where they're putting in new impact fees, the banks are actually some of our biggest friends to fight back, because they're flat out saying, you can charge all these fees, but there's no value to them, and we're not going to give a loan. So the appraiser's got to do their part too. So it's a mess. You're right.
Yeah, and I don't have necessarily anything to add to that. That might be a question best for us to research back with our econ department back home.
Well, awesome. So I think that is all the questions we have. I want to thank you three so much for being so wonderful to coordinate this with. I know our members really appreciate being talked to the big guys in DC about these big issues that we're all thinking about and have on our brains right now. So just a thank you from me. I'm going to let Karen close us out. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll certainly make sure that we keep you updated and in touch with all of the needed resources to help us address the housing cost issues and any regulatory or policy issues that may arise. That's what we're here for, and we wanted to demonstrate to you the great resources that we have on a national level that can deal and help us deal with local, state, and federal issues. So thank you three, and we look forward to having you around again very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, thank you.